Monday and Tuesday of this week, there were many bombings in Syria. And when I say bombings, I mean by a U.S.-led coalition. And although they have targeted ISIS, they ended up killing innocent civilians. So as the New York Times reports it, on Monday there were 56 civilians killed, and on Tuesday 21. This includes women and children. And of course there were dozens more injured. But other reports have that number being larger, right?
Yeah, the nonprofit reporting agency Syria Direct, who is on the ground in Syria, they reported that 124 people have been killed. And they predict that the casualties, those numbers will go up, I guess, during the aftermath and the cleanup of all this.
That's horrible. And what's even more horrible is, as of this recording, we have yet to find a major news agency reporting on this catastrophe.
Well, because you don't want people to see, the casualties of the war on terror.
Right.
Because, I think when we talk about the cost, it's more or less talked about the immediate cost as far as monetarily. Financial. Right. But there's like a lot of costs that don't get recognized on paper.
That's right.
A lot of residual costs.
Yeah.
Now, their deaths may be acknowledged, but what is going to come out of this? What kind of attitude does that create?
Yeah.
And I think that the media is not going to report on that, because I think the logical consequence that people are going to come to is, this, might make us look bad and might create more animosity. It's not that hard of a conclusion to reach.
See, and that's why, it's all good, that ISIS is being targeted. Okay.
Right.
Of course, we acknowledge that. Of course, ISIS needs to be fought.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to be the ones fighting them? That's debatable.
And
how we fight.
And
them.
how we fight them, because
that's
it's
debatable as well.
It just seems like every time we, get involved in these things, interventions, it seems like the issue we're trying to tackle gets worse. Afghanistan, Iraq, Egypt, Libya, now Syria.
And we have to acknowledge, too, that under Barack Obama, the drone strikes have increased.
So it's almost like, in dispelling the myth that comes from Republicans that Obama's not doing anything, you first got to defend it, then you got to talk about how egregious it is.
Yes, then you got to oppose it. Republicans say that Obama has been so weak on terrorism, right? So then we have to say, well, look at this. He was trying to bomb ISIS, and they've been bombing ISIS for months, right? But they ended up getting a huge number of civilians. So now we have to say, well, you were wrong, Republicans. Obama is, if you want to say showing strength, he's definitely doing that. He's bombing the hell out of ISIS, right? And not ISIS too. But then we have to say we don't agree with the strategy.
But I think probably most politicians see it as collateral damage in fighting the war on terror, and making our lives safe.
Man, when you got New York Times talking about 77, Syria Direct talking about they've counted 124 so far, and it could increase.
Mm-hmm.
When you got that many casualties of war, man, I'm sorry, I can't support that. These are actual human lives, man. They might not live in America.
So
they might be so far away that you don't have to think about them, but they're actually living human beings.
Saying that all lives matter, right? Oh, right.
All lives matter.
All lives matter, right?
Mm-hmm. A UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, they have said that 104 civilians, including 29 children and 16 women, have been killed since the start of June. Innocent civilians.
But we got Muggs over here hyper worried about the fetuses that are in wombs.
Right.
But we got children and women and innocent people that are outside the womb that are being bombarded with this tragedy every day.
And then
all because of the war on terror.
Yeah. And then these because it's most, even though this is a U.S. led strike and who's leading the U.S. is a Democrat right now, but these Republicans, they talk about being tough on war, right? They talk about doing that. But then, what do you think? Like this area that was just bombed, right? They made a mistake. It was a mistake, right? And they ended up bombing civilians. What do you think is going to happen to that area, or what could possibly happen to that area? Could it be that these people will leave that territory?
Oh, you mean refugees?
Yeah, refugees.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All these cats that are just so tough on war. We got to take a strong stand against terrorism, but we don't want to deal with the ramifications of our actions that lead to refugees. No, we want to put up the stiff arm and say, no, you people can't enter. No, go back home. But we just blew
So
up
what you're
home.
saying is, the United States is not taking personal responsibility?